There was a massive change in the film industry in the early 80s, because that's when you started to see video shops everywhere. And what it meant is that you could sell one video cassette of a film for 80 or 90 bucks, which is around $230 in contemporary dollars, real money. And that's because at that time, they weren't selling videos to consumers. They were selling them only to the video shops. And that's how they could be so expensive. So you would think, well, companies would be really, really excited to do this because they could just take their whole library of films and send it and make a fortune. But it didn't really go that way because this new kind of business threatened the way people had been doing business. So like if you're a distributor and you're renting out a film to a college classroom and you're getting $150 for the rental, you don't really want to take that rental, which might happen once a year for years, and let that professor know that they could just go down the street and rent something for a few dollars. And, if they have a classroom with 20 people in, so they'll never need to rent a 16 millimeter print again. And that's scary. And people didn't really know how those things were going to shake out. So the immediate reaction to home video was to kind of wait and see. And this created an opportunity to people like independent filmmakers who had a movie that was just sitting around gathering dust. It had never had a New York premiere. It had never really been reviewed. Nothing was happening to it. And suddenly there was this possibility that if you could somehow put it together to get the film to come out in New York, then you might be able to make a lot of money with a video deal. And I started getting called from filmmakers because when they're doing that, they're trying to go the cheapest possible way. So I think they probably asked around and said, is there somebody who's halfway competent at this that I can get for like the least amount of money possible? And eventually that took them from the big PR firms down to little old me working in my apartment on Riverside Drive. So I got these calls. And one of them was for a film called Ciao Manhattan. And this starred Edie Sedgwick of the Warhol Factory fame. Now, it was supposedly a fiction film, but it really was about Edie Sedgwick. In fact, they had interviews with Edie Sedgwick, which were used and kind of filtered into the character that she was playing. It took a long time for them to get this movie done. Did some reshooting after a while. They ran out of money, but the film got done in 1972, and then Edie Sedgwick died. So it got some distribution in Europe and a few play dates in America, but it never came out in the US. In the 80s, Gene Stein came out with a book called Edie, and it got a lot of attention for Edie Sedgwick. And David Weissman, who was one of the makers of Ciao Manhattan, figured this is the time. With that book coming out, there'll be all this attention, and then people will want to see the real Edie Sedgwick. So he arranged to bring the film out and give it a theatrical release. Now, in order for me to promote the film, I needed to use people who were in the film, and that included people like Baby Jane Holzer and Viva. And this was fun for me because I was really obsessed with Warhol's films because I hadn't seen them. I'd read about them. I read books on Warhol. I read essays on Warhol and like things that Viva had been in, like Blue Movie, which was sort of the first serious art movie with explicit sex. It kind of influenced Last Tango in Paris. The movie didn't play my town of Madison, Wisconsin, but the book, the screenplay was available in the bookstore. So I saw the screenplay. And that was kind of the way it was with this stuff. I was really, really interested in these people, but I just sort of heard about them from a certain remove, which makes them a little bit more legendary in your mind. At least it was to me. When I first spoke to Viva, I said, I really need some photos to promote the film. Do you have any pictures you can give me? And she sent me to the Chelsea Hotel. And she told the doorman at the Chelsea Hotel, or whatever it is, the guy there, to give me the keys to her apartment. And I go up to her apartment. Nobody's there. And she gives me this careful directions about put the chair up over here and go underneath the shelf and reach up high. And I'm bringing out this box. And I'm getting these pictures out, which are priceless pictures. I mean, and she's completely trusting me, a total stranger, and I take the pictures and I use them. I got to know her and we became friends, and I thought she was so funny and so wise and so clever, and I just enjoyed being around her. One of the things I was able to set up for her was an appearance on the David Letterman Show, and everybody's always excited when you have an independent film and you're able to get a booking like that, a national television booking. But after I did it, I started to worry because I had put Dennis Hopper on Letterman for a movie that he directed called Out of the Blue. I suspect that was another one of these movies that came out for a quick video deal, but really liked Dennis, really liked the film. And the entire time he was in New York, he was going, Letterman, man, Letterman, I can't wait to be on Letterman. He was such a huge fan. So when the time came and I brought him up there, he went on and he was just sitting down and Letterman said, I heard that you were arrested for something. What's that all about? And it was like the wind was completely knocked out of Dennis. And this person that was been such a delight to talk to for all those days that he'd been in town, all of a sudden he was devastated. It knocked the wind out of him, and all of his excitement about doing it, he was like crestfallen. I felt that he had been ambushed. I didn't know exactly what Letterman was talking about. I didn't ask Dennis, but the thing was, Letterman, for some reason, out of sheer meanness or whatever, just did that to him, to this person who would come on his show as his guest. So after that happened, I started watching Letterman a little more carefully than I had, and I saw, he does that now and then. If there's certain kinds of guests, he'll ambush them. And so I started wondering, is Viva that type of guest? Because she was eccentric. She had a real personality.
So anything he does is beautiful because he sees the best in everybody. He sees God wherever he looks and in whoever he looks at. So that's why they call it art, because he's just very good, It's very pure.
And I could think maybe he's going to do something to trip her up. And I didn't want to be responsible for having her have an experience that she didn't like. But what could you do? I mean, it was his show. So I thought about it, and I went to Viva and I said, listen, when you get there, it's like you're walking into his living room. He's at home. You're not. You're the stranger. So what I want you to do is, before you even sit down, I want you to start talking. I don't care what you say, but start talking. Don't let him get a word in edgewise. Make it the Viva show. I didn't know what she was going to do, but I knew that she would come up with something, and it was going to be real fun.
We see how we feel when we get up that morning, and we turn on the camera and we just do whatever we feel like doing. And whoever is the most aggressive is the star.
So she goes in there and she says, bring the camera over on me. She started directing. She had the camera. I want a close-up. No, closer. She started doing stuff, and it became her show. And she basically moved Letterman out of the shot. It was just her. Letterman, she basically edited him out. And Letterman didn't stop her. And I sort of suspected that he wouldn't, that she would be so strong that he would just sit back and see what she was going to do next. It would be good TV. And it was a wonderful time. She had fun on it. And in fact, I put her on Letterman again for another movie. And so afterwards I thought, could I do the same thing again? And I thought, well, you don't need to do the same thing again if you have a different there's certain kinds of people he's not going to ambush, and not every talk show host is Letterman. But if you've got somebody where you think it could be a problem, and if you've got the kind of person that you think could handle it, could take over, and you have the kind of relationship with them that you can ask them to do that, it might work. And it became something that I'm going to be considering this for later on, because I don't have to sit back passively and arrange things that hurt the people who have trusted me, like Dennis Hopper got hurt because of this thing that I set up. And it was a lesson. I think a lot of you have heard what Letterman had to say about that time in his life. And, he'd had a show canceled. And so I think he was always terrified that every single night things were going to be boring. So he would do things that were kind of rude to stir things up. And he regrets that now. And now he's become a very fine interviewer who is curious about the people he interviews and tries to find out everything about him. I know that if he interviewed Viva today, it would be a wonderful interview. Thanks for listening. See you next time.